Are you at risk of being a victim of narcissistic abuse? What about your daughter? What about your sister? If you're one of those people that started laughing or looked at the screen funny, let me drop this nugget to you. I bet the 158 million people in the US alone that have been affected by narcissistic abuse, they probably didn't think so either. I am Ida Johnson Myers. I'm a 24-year retired Army combat veteran and the CEO of When She Rides. I'm also an international speaker, a 3 times best-selling author, and a certified life coach, specializing in narcissistic abuse awareness, recovery, and victim prevention. I advocate for women to understand the difference between healthy and narcissistic loving relationships. Although severe narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder affects both men and women, I advocate for women because of the experiences that I have had throughout my military and beyond. I understand that women who suffer the insidiousness of this type of mental, emotional, financial, psychological abuse, they may be doing so while they're raising children. Broken and abused women raise broken and or abused children, who in turn, when they grow up, they look for abusive relationships or be that abuser in their relationships because that is what normal is for them. So the generational cycle starts all over again. Prior to COVID, psychologists were already reporting that over 158 million people were affected by narcissistic abuse. Those numbers, though, worldwide, 450 million people. Psychologists reported that the 158 in the US were low numbers because they couldn't account for the parents or the children who were of the narcissists who were affected by that generational cycle. Psychologists also reported that a person that has NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, has an average of 5 victims in their lifetime. High earners, though, they have more than that because we know more money, more victims. Narcissistic personality disorder is categorized in the same category, the same personality disorder category by the American Psychological Association, APA, as being in the same category as sociopaths and psychopaths. Sociopath and psychopath. Often when we talk about narcissistic personality disorder, people think we're talking about someone that's being selfish or someone, that's thinking all about themselves or a mama's boy. We're talking about when we deal with narcissistic abuse or narcissistic personality disorder, someone that is on the high scale in the same category as sociopath and psychopaths. And also psychologists report that someone with narcissistic personality disorder can actually have multiple disorders with that narcissistic personality disorder. Sociopath, psychopath, antisocial disorder, bipolar, whatever. They can have many others. Because narcissistic personality disorder is like the very friendly, the charming, the funny, the sexy, the physically fit, arrogant brother to sociopath and psychopath in the family, is actually more dangerous than being a sociopath or a psychopath. You can spot a sociopath or a psychopath for the most part. But because narcissism is about charming, they draw you in with that charm and with the jokes. They're able to charm people and lull them into, when they hear the off-color jokes, when they hear the off-color stuff, they dismiss it. When they see the off-color and something's not quite right, you dismiss it. Even in church, even in schools, even on your job, You dismiss it because you think you're being too sensitive. Many times women stay in narcissistically abusive relationships because they can't believe that the person that they deeply love, the person that they sleep next to, can actually hate them with a smile. They feel the disdain. They feel the hatred, but they think that they're being too critical, too sensitive. It's not until they actually get out of the situation and they go through all the abuse that they go through that they understand that their feelings was real. The average mind cannot fathom why anybody would stay in a situation like that. It's because the charm keeps drawing you in. You keep forgiving because of the charm. You think that they really didn't mean to do it when they actually know exactly what they're doing. But the charm is their weapon of choice. I'm here to tell you that those trauma bonds that you have that keeps causing you to go back into a roller coaster relationship, a hot and cold and up and down. You know, he's abusive one minute, he's nice the next. Those are trauma bonds. And that's part of the abusive game. Narcissistic, sociopath, psychopaths. Like I said, many times women don't even get out of the relationship. It takes maybe an average of seven, and psychologists say an average of 7 times before a female actually, a woman actually breaks that trauma bond and gets out of that trauma bond. And there are many women that don't even get out alive. We see it in the news. We've seen it in the news for years. During the height of COVID, victims weren't even able to rationalize anymore why they were staying in a situation that they couldn't get away from. Before COVID, they could go to work, go somewhere, go on vacation, and find a break from that abuse. During COVID, there was no way out. And it was painful to have to admit that relationship that you portrayed in public as good and as strong, that you'd have to admit that it's abusive and it's a nightmare. Or to admit that beautiful home that you're living in is now a prison cell or a cage. A lot of people didn't want to give up their life. But during COVID, they couldn't even act like it was okay anymore. Most people, because of the charm that the narcissist portrays, when the victim is trying to get help, when the victim is looking for help, a lot of times she can't even go get help because part of the narcissistic abusive game is to weaponize your support system, your friends, your family, the people at work. So everybody thinks that they're so charming and they're a great catch. They can't understand why you want to leave someone that great. So when you finally do come to the understanding that it's abusive and you need to separate, you have no one to go to because everybody is kind of on that side. That's part of the game. Women that are physically abused, people can see it, people empathize, people try to get her help, but people that deal with narcissistic abuse, because their bleeding wounds is on the inside, their spirit is broken, their insides are broken, people don't see that. And so it often goes untreated and unnoticed for years until the victim starts drinking excessively or doing drugs or being very, sexually active, and then they're trying to figure out what's wrong with her, not looking at what was she doing before all of that stuff happened. So again, this is on your jobs as well as in relationships, in the churches, at the schools. Broken and abused women raise broken and or abused children. And the average therapist and counselor is not a trauma specialist. So when a victim goes out to try to get help, it's very critical that they get someone that is a trauma specialist. Because you're a therapist, because you're a counselor, does not mean you're a trauma therapist. And oftentimes victims will go to get help and then get traumatized even more because they're with someone or they've chosen a therapist or a counselor that doesn't understand trauma, even though they may say they do. It's critical that you find out that they have trauma certification, trauma, specialists. They've done school for trauma because it's a totally different situation than regular counseling and therapy. And ladies, if you find yourself head over heels for a man that, is too good to be true in 3 or 4 weeks, then you may be the target of a narcissistic abuse situation. Thank you for listening. I am Ina Johnson Myers, your resiliency coach. You can reach me on social media, When She Rise One, or Linktree, When She Rise One. I honor you and I thank you.